What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Three Brothers. One, two, three brothers, and a shot of milk. I'm Jack Walker Pearson. We got Lawrence St. Victor, Chris St. Victor, absolute relation, and Richard Wilson. Richard! It's you, buddy. Before we get into why we're here, like, comment, subscribe. You can't really comment till you know what we're talking about, so maybe stick around and watch the thing if you got the time. Today we are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Boom.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you the spoiler-free synopsis, and then we'll give a spoiler-free thought section, and then we'll spoil the hell out of this content. So here's the synopsis. I'm going to read it. After reuniting with Gwen Stacy, Brooklyn's full-time friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, Miles Morales, is catapulted across the multiverse where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. However, when the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles finds himself pitted against the other spiders, and he must soon redefine what it means to be a hero so he can save the people he loves most. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
All right, let's get our spider-free thoughts.
I'll go first. I'm just gonna say this right here. Best superhero movie ever made. That's it. That's it.
I'll save my comment for the spoiler section.
What?
On his comments, I'll save my comment.
And that was why he said what to you.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I mean, this is spoiler free. So, this is an experience. That's it.
Yes.
This is an experience that you need to experience.
All right.
That's it. It was good, but it was long. Could have been shorter.
Did you say this about everything?
Did we need that ending? Maybe I'm getting old. Maybe that's it.
I think that's it. You was in Fast and the Furious like, this is long.
Yeah.
Did you fall asleep very
Well,
fast?
first of all, that was Fast and the Furious. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. Not Fast and Furious. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Right. Even the fact that it was kind of long, I still enjoyed it from beginning to end. And yeah, we'll talk about the rest after.
I also enjoyed it thoroughly. This movie is great. It's definitely worth the watch. That's my spoiler-free thoughts. All right, so I'll give a soft recap as we go along.
She ain't going like that.
Nope.
You could be surprised. So absolutely nothing we've said so
I
far.
don't know what lies they're telling you, Jack.
All right, so I'm going to give a soft recap, and as I go along,
What?
you double down.
Chris said, I don't know what lies she's telling you. So juvenile.
Just like you're doing, feel free to jump in, recalibrate, clarify the story, or make your thoughts be heard, because this train ain't stopping for no one, so you're going to have to stop it.
Let's go.
So here's the recap. The movie starts with Gwen Stacy struggling to tell her pops the truth as she's dealing with her own spider scenario. It's going to be a crude recap for those of you who are wondering.
Well, real quick, while you're there, first scene is really dope that her rock band is named the Mary Janes, which leads me to believe Mary Jane was in that group, who's probably the lead singer. So the Mary Jane of that world might have actually been on that stage.
Yeah.
Nice pickup.
Very cool.
The multiverse explodes. We are instantly hit with a Renaissance vulture who shows up.
Whoa. Back up. We see Peter Parker. And like she felt really close to him, but couldn't tell him what it is. And he was bullied in school and he becomes the lizard and she has to fight him. All that stuff.
And then she kills Peter Parker, and her dad wants to catch the Spider Woman, who's the villain vigilante responsible for her daughter's best friend's death. But her daughter's like, Dad, you don't understand the whole picture. yes, all that happens, and I'm skipping it. Do you want to talk about it?
Yes.
So we're skipping that part.
Why are we skipping like some of the most compelling? Well, this is amazing because like to open a movie without your main protagonist, without Miles
Right.
Morales, and you do it in such a deep, compelling, heartfelt way, which feels very Spider-Man. And we get to see her Uncle Ben moment. We get to see the moment where she has that tragedy in her life. And we get to see this Peter Parker. It's like, what if Peter Parker never became Spider-Man and continued to get bullied in school, got continued to be pushed around? Perhaps Spider-Man is what made Peter a hero. And without that, he might have become a villain
Well, you know
because
what
of
I
the
love
abuse.
most about that opening is what it gave me was this really rich backstory for Spider Gwen, and so by the time we get to the Spider Verse, I have superimplanted. They all have these really rich, hard backstories
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because they took the time to establish her instead of just jumping into Miles again, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which works. And as we dive into the Spider Verse, we're kind of made aware of that fact. They call them canon events, but we'll get into that when we get to that section. So, yes, thank you for clarifying that. So then the multiverse explodes, and we get this Renaissance vulture. And what's so cool about Across the Spider Verse is all the different variations from different multiverses are illustrated so different, or they're animated so distinctly. And so we really get this Renaissance vulture who looks like it was torn from the page of Da
Right.
Vinci's sketchbook, right?
Yeah.
So this movie it does such a good job of blending all these styles. Like if I was to tell you any aspect out of context from this movie, you'd be like, this movie sounds like trash. If I tell you there's a Lego Spider-Man.
Yeah.
We're in the Lego verse. I'm going to show you we're going to have scenes from live action Spider-Man movies. It sounds like the SpongeBob movie, right? It sounds ridiculous
Mm.
until you put it all together where the whole, how's the saying go? The whole is worth more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's my take on this movie. It's like
Well, the other thing that works so well about it is because it's not live action and it is a cartoon, I think genre blending is easier. So to see Legos in it and then to hear the guy say, "Peter, you're one of the best." And he's
Yeah.
talking to the Lego Peter.
and
You're
he's
like,
serious, yeah, it's
Yeah.
serious.
Well, what works here is that they don't wink to the camera. Nothing is a joke.
Yeah.
So that Lego Peter, he is the best at what he does. And before that, when you have what was I going to say? You said something, Chris, about it'll come back to me. But no moment is wasted. Like even okay, the beginning we get an idea of who Gwen Stacy is, but it's not just an origin. The death of Captain Stacy is actually a canon event that's going to play out later. So nothing is just here for exposition. Nothing is just here for here's her backstory. Like this information has ramifications down the line. And I felt that with every animation style. I felt that with every character. No one was just here to be here. It all kind of plays to a point.
yeah, this thing plays like a action drama. It doesn't play like a cartoon comedy.
Mm-mm.
You know,
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
and there
that
is.
fight scene. I'm sorry, Jack. Good.
No, go ahead, man.
I
Jump
was
in.
like, that fight scene was it felt like you're inside of a comic book. Like it set the tone so strong, and it just really, really, really translated well for me.
Well, it
Well,
literally
all
that first fight scene felt like the last fight scene in the first movie. Like they started off going hard in the paint. Like
Mhm.
from the beginning, it was like they topped the last fight scene, which is great. It wasn't just a sequel, kind of bringing it back, gonna start it slower. No, we were in there. We get freaking Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
that's the other thing that happens during the fight scene with vultures. We're introduced to some of these other Spider Verse characters, right?
Right.
We get Spider Woman who's pregnant. We get Spider Man 2099, and I think that those are the two we're introduced to right
Yeah.
then at the top.
Gwen.
And Gwen, right, who we start with, and then Gwen is in an interesting position where her father is put in a moment of true character, and he makes the wrong choice. He makes the choice to arrest his daughter after he finds out that his daughter is Spider Woman, and it's heartbreaking right at the top.
Yeah.
And you see, um, Spider-Man 2099, who's pretty villainous throughout the film, put her dad in like this prison thing, which is kind of real hard for her to watch, and then she ultimately decides to bounce with the other two Spider people
Right.
into this multiverse equation.
And what's really great about that moment, because everything plays it forward, is so now you're watching Miles as an audience. We're not saying just tell your parents, man, just tell them this. We're like, oh, don't, because we
Right.
just saw what happened. If you
Yeah,
do.
yeah, it might go
So
sideways.
everything's playing into the next story wonderfully.
Well, no, I mean, I get that, but I feel like his parents might say, because he wasn't Spider-Man or Miles wasn't a villain in his universe. He was just looked after as just a vigilante. Because you saw
Right.
his dynamic between him and his father when he's when he's Spider-Man. Like he
Right.
was sitting there kind of like giving him advice and whatnot.
Right.
That is true. But it justifies why Gwen told him don't say anything.
Exactly. It
later.
justifies why she said it and why he's on the fence. But yeah, Rich is right. Once we start diving into Spider-Man Miles Morales Spider-Man in that universe, he's got a good relationship with the police, the authorities, and the citizens for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. It's not even like, I think there was like one sound bite where you kind of heard, Jay Jonas in the background going, that guy. But that's after he like blew all the power to the city. So it might have been warranted. Also,
Yeah.
Spider-Man did a lot of apologizing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
in the apology videos.
And it makes sense from the first movie that his Spider-Man would be celebrated because the Peter Parker of that world wasn't a menace. This
Right.
world's
Yeah.
Peter Parker was a celebrated Spider-Man. So like it only makes sense that he would piggyback off of that. Yeah.
All right, so we pick up after the Gwen thing. The movie basically starts over with the new credits, and we pick up with Miles. And Miles is doing the classic Spider-Man trope thing, where he's struggling between being a hero and a teenager. He encounters this would-be villain, Spot, who later ends up becoming maybe the greatest threat known to the entire multiverse.
Dude, the way they don't throw anything away, because in any other Spider-Man movie, and we've seen it, Rhino, the Amazing Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
they'll throw in like a no-name villain to kind of be the guy Spider-Man beats in the beginning, and then we kind of get to the real villain as the movie goes on. But it's like, no. And we all thought he was just a villain of the week, like Miles said, but it's like the way they built him up into something terrifying.
Yeah, and it was almost because he was so disregarded. Like in the middle of Miles' fight with him, Miles bounced. He pieces out.
Yeah.
And he's like, I gotta go.
He was on his phone fighting him. That's
Yeah.
disrespectful.
He was eating a pate. He was doing everything.
Like he so paid him no attention, and that was the thing that shined Spot on so much that he doubled down on his own villainness. He's like, all right, let me up my game, and he does. Feel free to jump back if I'm jumping.
And what's really dope is when he figures out that he can enter the multiverse, he pops into Chris's favorite film of all time.
Oh,
He pops into Venom.
Yeah.
he literally does.
And that lady did not look impressed.
Unfazed.
Yep.
Like whatever.
Yeah, and so what was so interesting about that is it's again, this movie does so well what the other Spider-Man movie did and what the Doctor Strange movie failed to almost do at all is it bridged films together in a way that suddenly said everything is yes. Everything you've ever seen doesn't not exist.
Yep.
It exists. It just exists on another
Plane.
multiverse.
And this was Sony flexing. Sony is like, you love the MCU, but we actually own all the Spider-Man stuff. So Doctor Strange could have used Spider-Man stuff, but they'd have to pay us. So they chose not to. And we can just go into our library because we have all
Doctor Strange could have used. There's all kinds of things Doctor Strange could have figured out to use and not done it in a cheap way. We're not talking about the Doctor Strange movie. What I'm saying is this movie found a way to touch on things, add things that you've never seen, and it didn't feel cheap or
exactly.
Well, they would, because like they said, like Lawrence said, they would, like Marvel would have to pay, whereas Sony, they don't have to pay. So they had everything at their fingertips.
And MCU created a universe already. There would be no library multiverse for the MCU to
But
jump
here's what I'm
into.
saying: the MCU could have very easily, and they got mouse money, man. There's money in those films, and no amount of money wasn't spent on that Doctor Strange movie, but it was made cheap. And the choices they made with the cameos they brought on ultimately felt
The only way the
uncomfortable.
multiverse works this day and age is it's an all movie thing. So like if you don't have the library, that's why DC works right now, because the Flash is grabbing Michael Keaton. They have the library to create an
yeah.
actual multiverse.
But for
Doctor
example,
Strange doesn't have it.
how many Hulk movies have we seen that they have access to?
They don't have access. That's Universal.
Yeah.
They actually don't have access.
Even Norton?
Everything they share them with Universal. That's why Hulk doesn't have a solo movie. They actually share the characters similar to Spider-Man. So all the MCU has access to is all the movies we've already seen. And they can jump into some of the they could jump into X-Men. They have the Fox library now, but they don't have what Sony has. Sony is like, we have 8 Spider-Man movies we can play with and Venom.
All right.
Especially
All right.
It's
So
which
whatever
was
the case,
terrible. They made Venom good. This is the first time Venom was good, Chris.
And he wasn't in it.
He wasn't even in it.
so back on topic. So we have Spot jumping around through the multiverse, figuring his powers out, and well, before that though, what happens is Gwen shows up to say hi to Miles. Because
Right.
now she's inducted into the Spider-Verse team, and she gets a fancy little watch that lets her travel the multiverse. How that works out, who knows, but it
keeps
does.
it from glitching.
Keeps her from glitching.
Yeah.
Opens a portal. So she is there. We find this out, that she's there to observe and stop Spot from becoming this big multiverse villain. Maybe she doesn't exactly know the scale of it, but that's her mission. She gets distracted because her personal life says, I want to say hi to Miles while I'm in his universe.
Well, they both have this shared story up until this point of being lonely. Like no one understands them. They're kind of alone.
Well,
And for
also
her,
they went through part 1 together.
right, but she said that I've never had a friend like Peter except until I met you. And Miles is here, the only Spider-Man on this world, like missing his friends, missing the people he can connect with.
Right.
Yeah, so that loneliness is playing strong in the first set.
Well, Miles doesn't have anyone. Well, besides Peter,
roommate.
yes. And now
He has a roommate who knows.
his roommate is just there, still in his shoes. You know,
He specifically said, "I'm not your guy at the computer." Like
exactly.
he's
like, I'm not trying to be that guy.
Yeah.
So Miles doesn't have anybody except for the people that were in the first film, and he misses them.
So long story short, Gwen basically botches both things. On a personal level, she kind of isn't so cool with Miles, and on a professional level, she doesn't do a good job monitoring Spot. So she has to travel to another multiverse in order to figure out what's going on. Subsequently, Miles, in a cloaked spider form, follows after her. They end up in like an Indian version of Manhattan.
What's it called? Moonbatten? Something like that?
Moonbatten.
Yeah,
Yes.
A lot of letters in that thing. I don't even know
Where we get introduced to Indian Spider-Man and Spider-Punk, which is awesome.
Indian Spider-Man is so dope because he is like
is.
Well, Chris, you said we talked on the phone yesterday. He wasn't a nerd in school, but he was very smart.
Yep.
He's naturally buff, great head of hair. Like
you gotta know figure it out.
The most popular kid in school got bitten by the bug.
Right, right.
And then what happened? And he also doesn't. And as this giant fight ensues with the Spot character, who's going to a neutron generator thing to gain more spots, Miles ends up saving his Uncle Ben story. So the Indian Spider-Man doesn't even have the tragic background.
Right. He saves the Gwen Stacy's father pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we learn later subsequently may destroy that entire universe. Because that's what's considered
after that,
canon.
Which he gets the message on the arm that says canon event disrupted or delayed, whatever happened. We know the canon event, and then a big hole opens up in the floor, and then in the ground, and then a bunch of Spider-Man come in and try and contain it. And
right.
Now, this is such a cool take on a multiverse problem, and again, had a different movie kind of address the multiverse as a problem that had to be solved, it might have been a more interesting film.
Well, don't we have a series dedicated to addressing multiverse problems?
Right, interesting, which basically just rebooted after the series ended, and then that series mattered not at all when we got to the movie called Ant-Man. That series he's talking about is Loki.
Right.
Others about What If, which is also a multiverse series.
Literally a multiverse series,
Yeah.
which also didn't really pay dividends. But you got some of those multiverse characters in the Doctor Strange content.
Which will never hit as hard as seeing
Also,
Sony's multiverse characters.
No.
and they just killed all of them. So, spoiler alert.
What's also great up until this point is like seeing how great Miles has become as Spider-Man.
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
is
yeah,
dope.
yeah.
He's got a handle on his powers. He's confident. Like he's not the kid that was afraid to leap off the building in the last movie. He's
Right.
like, you want to thread the needle? Yeah. And he just does it and they like
Got
sick.
it. I got
And he's
it.
only been Spider-Man for a year and 4 months, something like that.
But then the Indian dude's like, I've been Spider-Man for 3 months. This is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The overachiever.
No, he's not. He's just easy, Chris. Like
Yeah.
breathing to him.
Natural.
He's so easy. And then so after that, after the canon event is destroyed, Miles is taken to the Spider-Verse headquarters, which all the way up until this point, Gwen has made it clear to Miles that no one is really inducted. It's a very small group. There's not really the space. The numbers are tight. I can't bring you in. And then we get there, and there's billions of Spider-Men.
Every Spider-Man but Miles.
Every Spider-Man but Miles.
Every Spider-Man to ever exist in canon.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Miles.
And you can tell he's a little hurt, but he doesn't make a big deal about it. I mean, we get one line, and he's basically moving on. He's emotionally moving on pretty quickly. He's like, all right, let's get to the jelly of it.
Can we
At
talk about the
headquarters-
cameos? Are you about to talk about cameos?
Let's talk about these cameos.
Let's talk about the cameos, and then I'll recap the events if they're still needed.
Man, first, like the Spectacular Spider-Man, which was like honestly the dopest Spider-Man cartoon. I'll say it. Fight me. The fact that he was in here, was
Literally
really dope.
in here,
and all the characters are voiced by the original voice actors, even if they had one line. The Insomniac video game Spider-Man, that's the actor.
It's almost like
said one sentence.
Jorge Jimenez is doing the Batman comic book right now, and Lawrence was showing us last week or the week before how there's pages in the comic where he's literally drawing all the different Batman in accurate style of how they've been depicted throughout the decades. And that's kind of what we're seeing in the Miles Morales Spider-Man movie here. We're seeing all the different Spider-Man and then a plethora that we've never seen. But we're seeing all the guys in comic book accurate depictions of how they should exist.
Even the comic book dude, Ben Reilly, who's like all angsty because that was the 90s.
Yeah. And so pouchy.
And with a pouchy belt and ripped to shreds.
Oh,
There's a lot of great video. Like I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game Spider-Man was in there somewhere.
He looked great. The Insomniac Spider-Man was there.
Insomniac was in there too.
You literally had Tobey Maguire. You had Andrew Garfield. And my favorite cameo, and this is so meta, you literally had Donald Glover as Prowler.
Yeah.
Which was interesting because later in the film, Miles Morales is Prowler, so that Donald Glover is just an homage to the fact that Miles Morales was created off of the inspiration of Donald Glover in the first place.
And Donald Glover played Uncle Aaron in Spider-Man Homecoming.
So
and
good.
He says, I have a nephew named Miles that lives in Brooklyn when he meets Tom Holland Spider-Man. So like, so I don't know, dude. That like they reached, they pulled up everything and made it make sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So while we're in the Spider-Verse headquarters, Miles is made aware of a few truths. One, he's made aware of the truth that his father must die in order for him to actually become Spider-Man. That's a canon event he has to go through. Two, he's subsequently made aware of this other truth that he is the original anomaly and the problem for all that the multiverse is experiencing, because he was bitten by a spider, not from his universe, but from an alternate universe, and he was never intended to be Spider-Man in the first place.
Right.
And then we also have all these hilarious poignant cameos that we just talked about. Donald Glover, yada yada, this and that. Ultimately ending with Miles goes on this, he has to flee to get out of the Spider-Verse headquarters because they're trying to lock him down, because he basically says, everyone's telling me my story, but I'm going to be the author of my story,
I
right?
can do everything. I can do it all.
It's interesting. I was watching that and I was about to call a flag on the play because I'm like, wouldn't it have been easier just to not tell him?
Right.
And just let
Well, they
his
tried to
father
not
die?
tell him.
Well, they still didn't have to tell him. And
True.
then I thought to myself, no, because not every Spider-Man in this headquarters had their canon event. Some of them had their canon event after they found out about it, like Gwen Stacy. Gwen knows her father is supposed to die on her world, yet she's accepted it. So I think 70% of Spider-Man here have accepted that their Uncle Ben or Captain Stacy has to die. So
Or
say
they've
for
70%'s probably already gone through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the
Probably
latter.
closer to 30%.
I would say the other. I think most of them probably made the choice to go with the multiverse. That's what makes Miles' choice stronger. He is not just the anomaly, he's the only one that says no. And you see the look on Gwen's face because she didn't say no. So I
Right.
think it's
It's almost like they hadn't even considered no as an option.
Did Spider Punk
until
say,
he does.
Did Spider Punk say no? Because he's not really part of the team. He's all about anarchy and stuff.
If I'm adding to the narrative, in my mind, Spider Punk, of course, went along with it and regrets it. That's why he's telling Miles, you don't know what you're fighting.
Or it
Yeah, it's
happened
either
already
that or
before he
it's
went.
already happened to him. It's more plausible.
I
Yeah.
feel like the whole thing about these scenes are choice. So if you're telling me
Right.
70% didn't have the choice, then the story doesn't work. The story works when 70% chose to do nothing, and then the one chooses to do something.
But they show us the one who chose to do something different, and it tore apart an entire. So the other main Spider-Man we're kind of following, other than
It's him,
Miles
yeah.
and Gwen, is Spider-Man 2099 from the future. And
Miguel
Spider-Man
O'Hara.
2099 from the future is the guy who created the thing that lets him travel through the multiverse, and he found a multiverse where there was an opportunity for him to insert himself back into the world as the loving husband and father. And so he does. And it subsequently tears that entire universe apart. It obliterates itself
Right.
because he's basically a foreign substance in this thing.
Right.
And all the Spider-Men know this. And that's why regardless of whether they want to or don't want to, they know that if they go against a canon event, they could undo the entire fabric of reality.
Which is
Right.
why in my, head canon, they made the choice to not do anything. It's just, to me, it's just
That
stronger
makes sense.
storytelling.
Yeah.
And then he's the one. There's only two people that have made the choice to say we're going to do something about it, and that's Spider-Man 2099 and now Miles. Bookends, good guy, bad guy. Everyone else in the middle, including Gwen, was like, I accept my father's fate. I accept Uncle Ben's fate. So it just makes
Well,
Miles, he's literally the Neo. He's like, I'm going to change things when nobody else would.
that's it's obviously debatable, and I don't think we need to debate it. What we think that ratio is. We know that a lot of the Spider-Men and women who we're seeing have gone through that canon event. And the irony of Miles is like, wasn't the death of his uncle his canon event?
We
No,
thought
No.
so.
Yeah.
no,
We
You
thought
thought,
so.
yeah.
no.
Until they
Because
realized.
when you look at Spider-Man, he always has a Harry who turns into a Green Goblin who dies. He always has a villain that dies in his arms. It's still not his Uncle Ben.
That's interesting.
It's not.
Huh?
It's when an innocent dies because he wasn't able to save them. That's when he.
Yeah.
That's the trauma.
But the difference, but Uncle Ben isn't necessarily an innocent dying because he couldn't save him. It's an innocent dying because of his a poor action in his character.
Yeah, his
Same
Right,
thing.
interaction.
which will be Spot. Spot will be that poor action because he didn't take him serious. Now he drove him to become powerful so he can be looked at as that villain.
Then his
That's
father
interesting.
dies, and that's his Uncle Ben event. Uncle Aaron is his like Green Goblin, Harry
Yep.
Osborn event.
Yep.
All right, so an epic battle ensues. Miles must escape the Spider-Verse, and he really shows.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Still,
really
this
shows-
is sick.
Yeah, this whole sequence was sick, and he really shows true genius as he manages to escape. All of the other Spider-Men from all the other alternate universes, and he ends up accessing a send you home machine. But the irony of it is, and we find this out.
We got to talk about the fight more, Jack. They were fighting on a rocket to the moon.
Where was that thing headed?
To the moon.
To the moon.
In this future, you can take like a train to the moon.
A train to the moon.
And they
doesn't
were on
make
that
sense at all. But okay,
Rich.
Future, it's 2099. Rich.
physically, so the moon is just in like stuck in orbit around.
So,
No,
so
they were taking it
theoretically, it's
up.
possible. Yeah, theoretically, it's possible. But
but the moon's moving around us.
Elon Musk said we can do this, Rich.
Did he now?
But they're fighting on top of this thing, and
Yeah,
it's interesting. Miguel, he has the claw fingertips, and Miles says, "Are you even a Spider-Man?" Which is very interesting because Miguel's whole backstory is like, "Are you even a Spider-Man?
yeah.
right.
Are you?" He doesn't have spider sense because we saw in the beginning of the movie he didn't respond to like something being thrown at him, and he pretty much is like this lab experiment.
Looks like vampire version of a.
He can put venom out of his fangs, so he's like the most un-Spider-Man like at all. He's another weird anomaly if you look at it that way. You have like these kind of like Agent Smith and Neo fighting, two sides to a coin, on a freaking rocket, and Miles is like, "Guess what I did, sucker? I lured all you Spider-Men away from the base."
Yep.
Peace.
Boom!
Because he's also a brilliant mind, Miles Morales.
Yes.
Can't forget his intellect. So yes, Jack, he gets back to the base. He befriended the girl who is like just using an avatar. She's Avatar Spider-Man. She's not even really there.
But they planted the seeds for her to go out of her way to say, "Hey, I'm a huge fan of you," before everything went crazy. Yeah. So we knew that. Go ahead.
She was gonna help. Yeah,
and not just I was looking deeper into it, and I'm like, well, everyone here is a sort of version of Peter, a sort of version of Gwen, or a sort of version of Miles, or a mix in between. So I'm like, look, who's Miles Morales here? And in my mind, Miles Morales is like the Gwen Stacy of his world. His father has to die. Her father has to die. They had alliance together where they're like, we're the same, except we're the same in the parts that matter. It's almost like they're the same string. And I wonder if that girl, they looked at each other's eyes for a moment and it was like, maybe you're the Miles of that world. That's why there's an instant connection between you two. Because they didn't have enough time to really justify why she would trust him. But we get it as an audience because I feel like you guys are the same.
there was
maybe
there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, But anyways, yes, Jack. So he goes into the thing to go back home.
To go back home, he goes into the go home machine, and we find this out later. But what happens is he's actually sent to the universe of the spider that bit him.
Right.
Which was never from his universe in the first place. So
talk about a twist.
Freaking
twist.
Yeah.
Because this whole time he's running and it's raining and he gets to the apartment. And I thought this. I didn't think about it too much, but I thought when he put on the hoodie and jacket, wow, those are purple. That's purple and like dark green. Those are power colors. That's weird.
And if you look in the kitchen, there's Puerto Rican flags in the kitchen, and Miles is half Dominican. So his mom is Puerto Rican in this universe.
That's right.
So, and then he's telling his mom, "Freaking, I'm Spider-Man," and she's like, "Who's Spider-Man?" But I'm thinking like maybe she don't know because she's not watching the news. Like it took me a while to go like.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but then after a while, I'm like, nah, she would know because her husband would talk about him.
Talk about Spider-Man all the time.
Yeah. And then he started bringing up Dad, and she was just like kind of like brushes it away. I was like,
Yeah.
yo, this is not his universe.
Yes.
His father's not alive.
And then Gwen goes through his room and he's not there.
Yeah.
Yo, this is like the
It's
dopest
best.
twist.
It's the dopest twist, and it
Yeah.
was, and all the seeds were there from jump. It was like when that played out, you're looking at storytelling genius.
Even
Just
the Jordans
genius
he
level
put
storytelling.
on in that room are a different color than the ones he was wearing earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
Like the details. Ugh.
Yeah, well, but this whole movie had to be detail orientated because there's so much going on in it.
Yeah.
And the thing that got me was when he finally met himself in this universe. Like, I thought when his uncle walked back in, boom, his uncle's alive. He's still the Prowler. But when he walked in,
Dude,
I was like, yo, Miles is the Prowler.
he's
Right.
like, I'm not the Prowler.
Which suddenly made sense
Yeah.
for Donald Glover's character being the Prowler.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, you showed us that right at jump. You showed us that Miles Morales is the Prowler.
Wow. I didn't pick up on that's on some Usual Suspects tip. I did not
That's
pick
what I'm
up
saying,
on that.
because the meta of that scene
they told
is
us.
Donald Glover, Miles Morales was modeled after Donald Glover. Donald Glover is Miles Morales then. But Donald Glover is playing the Prowler in the scene we see him. So they gave us the whole thing right.
They told us.
Yeah, it was
wow.
so good.
Wow. Okay.
It was so good. That
Come on.
moment was great.
Smarter than it needed to be, guys.
Yes.
They did not do all this.
Yeah.
And then Gwen kind of realizes that something's wrong because she knows that Miles went back to his place and she knows exactly what Miles went to do, save his father, and yet he's not here. So she figures out, shoot, he's probably sent back to where the spider was from. Yeah. So she puts together her own little Spider-Verse.
Wait, go back,
squad.
go back real quick. Go back before that.
You're right. Okay, all right.
Miles is tied up to the punching bag. Let's talk about
let's talk about. So Miles turns his back to his uncle. Boom, lights out. He wakes up tied to chained to a punching bag, having a conversation with his uncle. His uncle only to reveal that, hey kid, I'm not the Prowler. You are. And the giveaway was he changed his hair from being locked up to not being locked up, right?
The braids. He said with them braids. Like, oh, you took your hair out to braids?
Right.
But you can tell his uncle was playing him the whole time because when we finally do see the Prowler and he takes his mask off and it's Miles, his eyes are dead. Like his face is different. The Miles that he doesn't have the trauma on his face. So he probably
because his father's dead. His father's dead in this universe.
His father's dead and he turned to a life of villainy. So like Miles's expressions are different. The Uncle Aaron probably knew the second he looked into his eyes was like,
who are you? Yeah. What's going on here?
And he was like, we got to go back and save my dad. He's like, your dad.
Yeah.
So we don't know. We don't know like what this Miles, like whose side is he on? Does he care?
Yeah.
Man.
Then Gwen forms her own spider posse, formed with the Spider-Man from the multiverse in the first Spider-Man movie, which is a much better team to put together. Finally, we get Spider-Ham's back.
That's all you wanted, Jack. I thought about you when I saw him pop up. I'm like, Jack is happy.
And we get Spider Noir. We get the
wonder if Nicolas Cage will come back.
Hopefully he's coming back for this one. But then the worst part of the movie also happened. For me, it just stops. There's zero resolution, and at the end of the movie, I am finding out because when I see a trailer for something that I know I like and I want to watch, I try to avoid it up until the point I've watched it. I'll watch one trailer and then I'll try to avoid it. So I had no idea this was a 2-part thing. So at the end of the movie, I'm sitting here going, "You did?
No one did.
No, it was called part. It was called part 1.
Where
was it?
It was called part 1.
No shot.
No. Let me see.
I didn't even been in the theater where I heard the audible groan from everyone in the theater.
Yeah,
and that's how I felt. I was so disappointed at the end, the last beat, where I had zero resolution to sitting there for 2.5 hours going, this is awesome, this is sick, this is great, this is awesome, the animation's killing it. Oh my, this is so good, and then the twist at the end, and then zero resolution. Zero. Not a shred of
I mean, you
resolution.
didn't feel
This
like
is like
that during
Matrix
Fast X?
2.
Same thing happened in Fast X.
Fast
Don't
X.
bring that
X
up.
was-
Same thing happened in Back to the Future.
But here's the difference between Fast X and this. Fast X, it was just like pulling teeth for me. I'm like, this is too long. What is going on? And then it was like coming down to the hour, like 2 and whatever minutes. I'm sitting like, this is not going to end. This is going to be this is going to be a sequel to this. But in this one, I was watching it. I'm sitting there like, yo, this thing is long, but I don't mind it.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
But it's
But
the man, just
it-
let me know. If you let me know it's a 2-part thing, I'm with it.
No. It has been though. I'm reading an article right now from March 10th saying is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in 2 parts a bad idea. It's been known. They didn't beat you over their head
No,
with it as it was coming out.
what's the date? What's the date on that?
anywhere.
What's the date?
That was March 10th.
Mm.
It's been
No
known.
idea.
It's been known.
No,
They didn't lead with that.
Listen, you go buy tickets. It says just Across the Spider-Verse. Doesn't say part 1.
It sure does. It sure does. Every poster I've ever seen is just Spider-Man across. There's no part 1, and they're not even
wait,
called. They're not even called. The third one's called Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Wait. Listen to this. You guys can't argue like facts though. Published April 21st, 2022. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse won't be swinging into theaters until 2023. Sony has been hard at work. Blah 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 blah. Animated hit Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. It gave the title of the film. This is an article that was written April 21st, 2022. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. April 1st, 2022.
I had to go and read that one obscure article.
Thank you.
It's not obscure. It's on like.
Hey,
just
you got a poster up there in the corner of our screen.
Guys, we gotta pretend. We gotta pretend like we have a podcast and we know like what the movie titles are.
Listen, I'm the audience walking in there being disappointed because I tried to support but avoid the content. I'm looking at what your advertising model is, and you're not telling me it's a 2-part thing.
I literally just told you April 21st of 2022 gave you the title Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Not obscure, it's Collider. It's a big website, geeky stuff. Now, if you didn't know, that's cool. And I don't think they wanted to hammer it home as you went in there. But it kind of has been known that it's
so 1 out of 4 people know.
Right.
April 21st, 2022.
I don't read articles.
I
can't read. I don't know.
Hey, I don't read articles. I don't watch movie trailers. I get you. But you can't poo-poo on
the
it.
movie trailer don't say that it's a 2-parter, so what are you talking about?
Sure didn't. The trailer sure did not. Thank you,
I don't know.
Rich.
I think
Thank you, Rich, again.
I think it's a mute point to kind of beat home. I mean, I'd rather get more content than less. So
I would too, but I go in with a different expectation.
Maybe you shouldn't have expectations. Maybe you should be happy they didn't cram 2 movies into one.
I just want a story.
This was a story.
It wasn't a story that completes itself. What's the resolution?
Why do you need the resolutions in part 2?
I'm not crapping on the film. I'm just saying I was one of the people who audibly gasped.
Yeah, like I'm not correct. Like it was. I didn't gasp. I was just like, oh, this is going to be a second part to this. Okay.
Man, I knew I forgot about the parts, but I knew there was going to be a second part. The second I'm looking at my watch, and like we're no closer to the you knew this wasn't going to conclude.
Well, the difference is I wasn't looking at my watch.
I was enjoying the story,
which means
they did a good job.
You know that you've been in there for 2 hours.
You said it.
So you didn't know you were in there for 2 hours when you went to the wrong universe?
I was in it, man.
You thought he was going to get out, save his dad, and beat Spider-Man 2099 in 10 minutes?
Well, I figured there's going to be a team up to have to all fight together to stop Spot.
And that would have felt so rushed if
it
they
would
did
have,
that.
but it would have been concluded. I would have listen. I'm not saying I'm not looking forward to the third one. What I am saying is, damn man, I wish I had known that it was a 2-part thing.
Why?
Like for example,
why can't that gas be good?
You're splitting hairs because the movie was so good. I'm telling you that right now. You're because the movie was so good. This is why it's sticking to you.
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
I can't think of a single event where a movie doesn't have. It's weird, man, because like some movies set themselves up where you know it's going to be a trilogy. Lord of the Rings. You knew that movie wasn't done after the first one.
Right.
The Matrix Part 1, that movie concluded its storyline. Matrix 2 left this open-ended gap that was like, okay. And then you finally get to the third one. A lot of films, for me personally, and I'm only talking about myself personally, when a franchise sets up something specific, we tell stories that have some sort of resolution, right? Most of the Fast and the Furious movies are resolved after the first thing. This Mission Impossible movie, they're marketing it as part 1. So you know that it's not going to be concluded. Infinity Gauntlet, they marketed it as you know it's not going to be concluded. So I'm
This
just
is what,
saying
yeah,
it's
and
it's
this is
a
where
it's a hard thing for me.
and this is why I can't let it go, Chris, because literally
Here you go.
Marvel Entertainment
Here you go.
first look trailer, Spider-Man Across the Multiverse, part 1 came out 1 year ago. It's not my fault you missed the marketing. Like they didn't hide it from you.
It's
like
not on
right
any
here.
marketing I've seen. Part
Doesn't
1
that
is
doesn't
not
mean
on
it
any.
doesn't exist?
All right, I'm not
Marvel
meaning to listen.
Entertainment trailer. First look. We probably posted this trailer. Let me go to our Instagram. I'll show
I
you who
didn't.
posted
No,
it.
I'm gonna tell you right now, we didn't. I know.
Let's go.
Or
I know
listen,
we
for
didn't.
the record, I'm not the one laboring this point.
You just talked about why I need to know. Without knowing, there's no you labored
No, I
with
said
your whole
personally,
speech.
it's not something I enjoy. I don't like being at the end of the film finding out that it's a two-part thing. If I go into it knowing, I'm happy about it.
Which makes me respond. They told you.
Listen, I also didn't know the Fast and the Furious was a three-part thing.
They
Maybe
didn't
three
tell
part.
you.
Maybe 3 part.
They didn't
Definitely
tell
2 part.
you.
Maybe 3. Fingers
What?
crossed for 3.
It's just
You got
it's
fingers crossed. All right.
just this like how much you're gonna milk a thing. Now this is different than how much you're gonna milk a thing because it did feel like the story wants more room to breathe and expand. So I'm happy about. I'm not depressed about it, but I was like, oh, I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd known that.
If only there was articles that Lawrence could have pulled up
Yeah,
from these sites.
maybe
Only-
something that had been floating around for a year or
If
two.
only like there have been trailers and articles that said part 1 for a year.
All right,
Hey,
last thoughts
listen.
on the film.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Um,
Better
the
than
film.
it had to be.
Yeah, the film was a banger. They Sony put their foot in this one, and they were like, "Yo, we ain't playing with y'all." They flexed. They're like, "Yo, we own all these rights, and we gonna put it all up in here."
dude, like I said, this is to me the best superhero movie ever made. Like it's not even a close contest. Like even though they didn't finish their story, they finished the story they set up. Miles was complaining about being alone, and now he's not, and it's his worst nightmare. I wish I was with
Hey,
other Spider-Men. Now you
that's
are, and they're trying to fight you.
that's really good, and we got that monologue to a mom that wasn't his mom.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we saw that.
So you see,
We saw character transformation. That's true, and growth.
yeah. And then Gwen, and also this is the way it started with Gwen Stacy. And she went from believing she had to like never go back home, never deal with her father. And we didn't even talk about it, but she does
Right.
wind up going back home and
Yeah.
she deals with her father. So we get that.
And she finds out that her father quit the police force, so that canon event that was supposed to be hers isn't hers
It's done.
anyways.
right.
That's
Some
it.
other poor captain's going to die here.
That's all right.
But
Randall,
like, so although the movie is going to have a part 2 to this, every question they asked, they did answer in this film, even if it was in an obscure way.
Yeah.
Gwen got her answer.
But I have a question about that. The thing about her father quitting the force happened because the vulture from another dimension came to her world, and that turn of events based off of the other multiverse Spider-Man also being there is the catalyst that pushed her to being caught by her father in the first place and taking off her mask and saying, "Dad, it's me." That event also caused her to leave her world and caused her dad to quit the force. So that undid the canon event, which also
man.
paradoxically would also mean her universe should be tearing itself apart, though.
which is why Spider-Man 2099 is a maniac and probably full of crap.
Right. But also,
he didn't just create a canon event in that world. He saw Miguel die. He went in and took his place as a father and husband. Like, he did more than just save the wrong person. Like, he resurrected the dude from the dead and completely interfered with that timeline for who knows how long.
Right.
There might be more. I think there's more to this story. When we see part 3, we're going to see that I think there's going to be more consequences. There's going to be more things that Miguel's hiding. And
what to Miguel's defense, I don't think he has the answers. He's just like, if there's a small percentage we can end the world, then we're not going to take the chance.
Right, but pulling a Spider-Man out of their universe for any amount of time changes the timeline of that universe.
But I guess it has to be a canon event. So some things aren't canon events, I guess. But I assume a Peter not getting bit in that other Earth should be a canon event. Y'all should be trying to figure out a way to correct that.
Right, because maybe that Earth already pulled itself apart.
Maybe. So I'm looking for a Spider-Punk figure, and I came across GameStop. Hasbro Marvel Legends series, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Part 1.
Oh, Miles is it on the packaging? Wait, are you telling me it's on the packaging?
It actually is on the packaging. It really is on the packaging.
Oh, it's not on this poster. Forget about this poster. Sucks.
Oh,
yeah. But Rich, are you telling me it's on? Is it on that marketing material that's all over Target?
It's on the card. It's on the card.
Yeah. But I will say this, and Jack, you're right. It has said there's a part 1, but they didn't lean into it, and I'm happy. I'm the one that's happy that I didn't remember there was a part 1. I that gasp you had, I had it in a way where it was enjoyable. Like, I can't believe you took me there.
I'm not optimistically looking forward to the third one now. But listen, I could die tonight, and I'll never have the resolution.
You'll never know. So you gotta keep going.
I gotta live and die with that.
Spoiler alert: Spider-Man wins.
Also, I'll say this. There's a writer strike going on, so unless that script was concluded, they're not beginning work on that.
I think it was. I think it's one of those bad boys where it's like Back to the Future, like 2 and 3 are kind of been one long.
Yeah, because animation is what's going to take for the time for production. I'm sorry,
they said it took Spider-Punk 2 years to animate to get that right.
He looks so good.
He does.
Yeah. I mean,
he's
amazing.
He's my new Spider-Man. I'm be honest with you.
You bought it?
That's why I really wanted to find that.
No, I mean he's my new favorite Spider-Man now.
He's like, hello, bro. He's great. And he was kind of like this jerk character, but then it turned out, you're not just a rebel against the machine. You're also giving Miles intel, like, dude, don't do it. Like, he played a part. Yeah. And then gave him, like, no one was wasted
he gave him helpful advice.
Yeah, and then he gave Gwen the bracelet.
Use your power. Yeah. So you see, he's a hero in his own regard. Well, they're all heroes. They're all heroes.
Yeah.
And you got Spot over here just growing in power. Just growing. I mean, I think it was great for me. I think everything that I ever wanted to see in one of these, it was in there. And I'm nervous and excited for part 3 because I'm like, how do you land this plane?
They'll deliver. I have no doubt.
I know they will. Back to the Future 3 didn't deliver as hard as it did as 1 and 2 did for me, so I think I'm thinking about that.
Nah.
But I mean,
this is a little bit of a different story. This is more like Back to the Future 1 into 2 more than 2 into 3.
Is it?
Yeah, 3 was kind of let's just keep going. Let's just do something else.
Yeah.
Shall we rank this thing?
Please.
I'll go first. I'm gonna give it probably the lowest score out of the group.
I'm gonna ask you why. We're gonna say why.
I'm giving it an 8.
Really?
Are you serious?
Listen, I thought it was great. I super enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I thought the animation was off the charts. I give it an 8 because the story is not complete. It's not concluded. You can't honestly rank it until the other one comes out. And then it's going to be like the Infinity Gauntlet Saga and Endgame. It's basically one film. And in order to talk about one film, you can't talk about one film without the other film. So this one's hard for me. I need the other film.
I respect that. I understand that.
I don't respect that at all, but I hear you. It's a movie. This was 2 hours and 2.5 hours.
Yeah, right.
This is
With
a
no
movie.
resolution.
Look, I'll go. I'll
They
go
had a
next.
resolution. I gave you the resolution.
What do you got, Rich?
I'm gonna give it a solid 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes,
At
Rich.
this point, like I didn't see issues with it, except for maybe it was a little bit too long.
But we're getting old.
We're getting old, right? Right. I was very surprised I actually stayed awake through this whole thing. And then in fact, it's a one parter, or no, it's one of two, maybe three parts. But that was a pleasant surprise. So I'm gonna just give it a solid 10 because I was thoroughly engaged and entertained all the way through.
Mm.
Wow. Chris?
10, baby. I mean, I can't. There's nothing to take apart from this movie. This movie delivered so much on so many levels. From a parenting level, I sympathize with his parents. As raising a child, like it hit you on so many different levels, on comic book levels, as a young minority level. Like it just everything. Just gave it all to me. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Man, I gotta give this bad boy a 10 as well. It's a 10. Everything you guys said, but then also just the culture, the music, the detail, and just seeing like New York come alive and the different versions of New York and the performances. And Jack, I feel the same way you feel, but in the opposite. I'm like, this is just half your story, and you did this with just half.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Like Infinity War, the first part did not do as much as this did with 2 hours.
Right.
That one set itself up for a part. This one was like, we're going to give you a full-on experience.
Well, and you know what's so great about the third one? What they've already done at the end of this one, because there was a first one, and this is the second part 2, part 1, essentially.
Across
it's part
the
2, part
Spider-Verse,
1.
part 1. Yeah.
Yeah. The cast of characters that are introduced at the end of the film to be the heroes moving into the third part of the film to take on the now possibly villainous Spider-Man moving into the third part of the film is great because we already have a relationship with them based off of the first one that had no parts.
Right.
Yeah. And we got a Spider War to look forward to. We got freaking Miles versus Miles to look forward to, or a team up, and then they all still got to get together and stop Spot,
or a team up, and that's going to be the most interesting thing. Obviously, we know Miles is going to fight himself as Prowler form, but what we don't know is whether or not Miles as Prowler form is eventually going to be a hero. Also,
he might be. He's still Miles,
man. So like,
he's Miles with some trauma though.
Yeah.
He's
because he went through his canon event.
So we saw what happened to Peter when he didn't become Spider-Man. He turned to a lizard and was a villain and died.
Quest for power. Well, Spider-Man without his canon event is not a very good person either. Look at the comics. Without his Uncle Ben, he's a wrestler in the first movie, just making money being a dick.
Right.
So you
Jack,
kind of
let me ask you. I'll ask you this question: is Spider-Man No Way Home better than this? Better than what you saw?
No. But
you gave that a 9.
But when the three Spider-Men come together,
I'm going to hold you to this.
You're right about the first part of that movie. The first part of that movie is like you just wait for the movie to kind of kick in.
The first half, they don't even come in until after Aunt May dies.
So when we review part 3, I want you to come back and reevaluate your vote on here.
That's fair, and I'm willing to do it, and I'm happy to do it. I'm excited to do it. In fact, so collectively, we have given the film collectively a 9.5.
There you go.
Hey.
There goes Jack messing up a perfect score.
It's always something.
Hey man,
you want to close us off with this, Lawrence?
Yeah, dude. This movie was great, but let us know what you thought in the comments below. Did it tickle your fancy? Did it sling your webs? Did it spider your senses? Make sure you like, subscribe, tell a friend about it. Hit the links below. We got a podcast, we got social media, we're all over the place, and we'll be back. Same spider time.
Same Spider Channel.
That's my cousin. He knows. What's up, y'all? Welcome to Three Brothers and a Shot of Milk. We're talking